Now let's talk about Medicare Part D, which is Medicare's prescription drug coverage. Part D covers certain prescription drugs, biologics, insulin, some supplies used to inject insulin, and vaccines that are not covered under Part B. One of the biggest things to understand right away is that Part D is only provided through private companies. There is no fee-for-service Part D benefit directly from the federal government. Part D benefits come through standalone prescription drug plans called PDPs, through Medicare Advantage plans that include drug coverage called MAPDs, through certain cost plans, and through PACE plans. To be eligible for Part D, a person must be entitled to Part A and/or enrolled in Part B, and must be a U.S. citizen or lawfully present in the United States on or before the enrollment effective date. But how a person gets Part D also depends on how they receive their Medicare medical coverage. In general, people in original Medicare can enroll in a standalone PDP. People enrolled in an MAHMO or PPO usually must get their Part D coverage through that Medicare Advantage plan instead, and people in an MSA may only get Part D through a standalone PDP. Let's talk about what Part D covers and what it does not. Part D includes many common outpatient prescription medications, but it does not cover every possible drug. Specifically excluded are certain medications for weight loss or gain, fertility drugs, cosmetic drugs, many vitamins, non-prescription medications, and drugs that are already covered under Part A or Part B. This is why it's important to check a plan's formulary. A formulary is a list of drugs that the plan covers. While plans may not include every medication in each category, they must meet certain requirements. These include covering at least 2 drugs in every therapeutic category, offering both generic and brand name options, and covering all or nearly all drugs in 6 protected classes that treat life-changing or life-sustaining conditions. Plans also organize their covered drugs into cost-sharing tiers. For example, lower tiers often include generic drugs and cost less, while higher tiers may include non-preferred brand drugs or specialty drugs and cost more. So when someone is choosing a Part D plan, it is not enough to ask, "Is my drug covered?" A better question is my drug covered? What tier is it on, and what pharmacy gives me the best cost? Now let's get into the 2026 math, because this part matters. Under the standard Part D benefit for 2026, the beneficiary pays a deductible of up to $615. After that, during the initial coverage phase, the beneficiary generally pays 25% of prescription drug costs. Once the beneficiary's true out-of-pocket costs, also called TROOP, reach $2,000, the person moves into catastrophic coverage. At that point, the beneficiary pays nothing for covered Part D drugs for the rest of the year. That is one of the biggest changes people need to understand in modern Part D. The coverage gap has been eliminated and the out-of-pocket exposure is capped. Here's a straightforward way to understand it. First, there is the deductible phase, during which the beneficiary must pay 100% of costs until the deductible is met. Next is the initial coverage phase, where the beneficiary typically pays 25% of the costs. Once the beneficiary's out-of-pocket expenses that count toward total out-of-pocket reach $2,100, catastrophic coverage begins, and the beneficiary pays nothing for covered Part D medications for the remainder of the calendar year. Additionally, there are 2 special protections. Covered insulin cannot cost more than $35 for a 1-month supply in any coverage phase, and recommended adult vaccines covered by Part D have no cost sharing. It is also important to understand what counts toward TROOP and what does not. In general, the deductible and cost sharing for formulary drugs purchased at network pharmacies count toward TROOP. But costs for non-formulary drugs that are not approved through an exception, over-the-counter drugs, many out-of-network purchases, and drugs bought outside the United States do not count. So when someone says, "I spent money at the pharmacy," that does not automatically mean all of that spending moves them closer to the catastrophic phase. Choosing a pharmacy is also important. Part D coverage is typically provided through a network of pharmacies. Some plans designate specific pharmacies as preferred pharmacies, which offer lower cost sharing compared to standard network pharmacies. In certain limited situations, a person may use an out-of-network pharmacy, like when traveling, but this may come with higher costs. Therefore, when selecting a Part D plan, it is crucial to consider not only the medications covered, but also the pharmacy network and to verify whether their usual pharmacy is a preferred one. Part D plans may have a monthly premium. Generally, a higher premium may result in lower out-of-pocket costs within the plan. It's important to be aware of the late enrollment penalty. If a person does not enroll in Part D when first eligible and goes without coverage for at least 63 continuous days, they may have to pay a penalty, set at 1% of the national average beneficiary premium for each month, and usually lasts for as long as they have Medicare prescription drug coverage. However, individuals who qualify for the low-income subsidy, also known as extra help, are not subject to the late enrollment penalty. Employer or union drug coverage can protect individuals from penalties if that coverage is considered creditable. Each year, employers and unions are required to inform their members whether their drug coverage qualifies as creditable. If it is creditable and an individual later loses this coverage, they can typically enroll in a Part D plan within 63 days without facing a penalty. Therefore, check your options before dropping existing plans. Part D plans also use management tools. These can include prior authorization, step therapy, quantity limits, and generic substitution rules, but beneficiaries do have rights. They can request a coverage determination, ask for a formulary exception. If a drug is not covered, request a tiering exception if they need a lower cost tier, and appeal if the plan says no. Plans must also provide transition refills in certain situations, such as when someone is newly enrolling, switching plans, or affected by a formulary change, so people are not suddenly cut off. One more important feature is the Medicare prescription payment plan. Part D sponsors must offer enrollees the option to spread their costs across monthly payments instead of paying at the pharmacy counter. This option does not change what counts toward TROOP or how the benefit phases work, but it can help smooth out cash flow, especially for people who have high drug costs earlier in the year. For individuals with limited income and resources, assistance may be available. Beneficiaries should be encouraged to apply for the low-income subsidy, also known as extra help, through Medicaid or Social Security. Some individuals qualify automatically, including those with full Medicaid coverage, recipients of certain Medicare savings programs, and people receiving Supplemental Security Income, SSI. The module also includes examples of cost sharing for the low-income subsidy in 2026, demonstrating that eligible beneficiaries may have a zero deductible and very low copayments. So here's the big takeaway. Part D is Medicare's prescription drug coverage, but it works through private plans, not directly through original Medicare. Choosing a plan means looking at more than just the premium. And most of all, you want to avoid missing your enrollment window because going without creditable drug coverage can create a penalty later. We now understand how Part D works. The final step is putting everything together so people can compare original Medicare, Medigap, Medicare Advantage, and drug coverage in a way that fits their real-life needs.